Well, if you've been following my videos, you know one of the winter infrastructure projects I wanted to get done was trimming the hedges. And you can see behind me that this area where we have a lot of bushes and hedges, we've got them pretty much trimmed. Right behind me there, kind of the tallest hedge in the back is kind of the hedge between the street and the garden. And I think we can still kind of top and square that off a bit, but otherwise, yeah, we've pretty much got this part nailed. Another project we're working on back here is the what I call the rose gate bed. It's between the rose gate and the fire pit area back there. And we had a lot of leftover potting soil, and so we're putting it down on the ground because I had put a bunch of compost in there, but the compost that I put in there had been mixed, I think, with a bunch of sod and mud and stuff, and so it was actually kind of had a very clay texture to what we put down on there. And I didn't like that result. So this is both texture, but it's also, look, that nice kind of clean kind of black blanket look over it, I think is looking great. Well, I'm here in the basement nursery again, and I thought what I could do is walk you all through the status of the seedlings, so kind of give you a seedling update for the different flowers and plants that I have growing in here. And I'm going to do that while I'm watering these trays. You'd be surprised how much watering I need to do in here. I came in this morning and it was actually 73 degrees down here because the heat that we have, the heat for the house, keeps the basement nice and warm. So that's made this an ideal place to kind of be the starting zone for seedlings. Okay, let me show you what we have. Lupine. The lupines have been planted in 3-inch pots instead of the 6-cell trays because they prefer minimal root disturbance. So starting the larger pots avoids us from having to pot up before they go out into the ground. Lisianthus. Well, I reported previously that I overwatered and created mold, perhaps some damping off problems here. I've let them dry out and there is some surviving, so we'll see if babying them from here on in will save them. Foxgloves. I have a lot of foxgloves, or digitalis as it's also called, planted here. It's not clear to me if I'll get flowers this year. Even though I've planted it before, I haven't paid enough attention to know which plantings were actually flowering. Last year we had a great foxglove show, but the thing is, I had plants from the prior year in the ground as well as new starts that I put in. And similar this year, I have plants that self-sowed last year in the ground now. So I'm not sure if these seedlings will be early enough to flower this year, or if I'm really just raising seedlings for the spring 2023 show. Delphinium. As you'll see here, germination was spotty, but we now have some good starts going. Red bulbing onions. I've planted red bulb onions from seed here. These are doing fantastic. I'll be moving them out into the greenhouse soon. The threshold on when I do that is when I happen to need space here in the warm nursery. These onions can be moved in the greenhouse, that is, where it's colder because they will tolerate the cold. Shallots. Similar to the bulbing onions, these can be moved into the greenhouse soon. Leeks. Well, you know what I'm going to say. It's the same as the onions and shallots. I will move them out of the lights and into the greenhouse as soon as I need the space. Eggplants. I'm very happy with these. They're growing strong and will probably need to be potted up in 2 to 3 weeks. Dahlias. These are another set of plants that I started in 3-inch pots instead of 6-cell trays, just to avoid potting up too many times. I grew these last year from seed, and I had a great display starting in late August. These seeds are from Botanical Interests. These aren't the large dinner plate dahlias that you see that you would normally probably grow from tubers. The flower heads here are reds and yellows, and they're around 3 to 4 inches across. Peppers. I just removed the humidity domes and the seedlings have definitely germinated well. I'm not sure if they're stretching or if they're okay at this stage. I haven't quite figured out the strength and relative distance from these LEDs that I need to use in order to optimize my seedlings. But my experience tells me that even if they are a little bit leggy here, they'll get fixed and kind of grow up just fine by the time I move them out into the greenhouse and then before they go in the ground anyway. Salvia Violet Queen. These are looking perfect, and it's like I've caught them exactly at the right time for watering. White Dill. This is the first time I've grown this. White Dill is intended to be a decorative, although it's also a variety of the herb dill. This is the earliest herb that I planted this year. Status. I've grown this before and it was very little fuss. The version I grew before was a tight cluster of flowers. These have obviously germinated well here, so we'll see how the flowers go this year. Sulplugosis. These were just planted under humidity domes about a week and a half ago. So germinating good, although you can see not all the cells have the same amount of germination. So I'll put this back under the humidity dome to see if that inspires more germination over the next week or so.
Carnations, also planted about a week and a half ago. I just took off the humidity dome. In this case, I'll leave the humidity dome off. These have great germination. The carnations are perennial if you care for them. I have a small patch in the garden that's a few years old and it's still doing okay. Artichokes. I love growing these. They're also perennial, but I found that some plants will survive the winter and some just don't, and I don't really know why. So I plant a new batch from seed each year. The seedlings are relatively big, and I start these in the early first part of January, so that's why I start them in 3-inch pots instead of 6 cell trays. Walla Walla onions. Yes, more onions. I bet you thought we were done with those. You know what? You know the drill. We're going to move them out into the greenhouse as soon as we need the space. Snapdragons. These have been relatively easy to grow as flowers for me. I got confused last year though, thinking they were perennial, and I just let them carry on in the ground over from the prior year, and I didn't plant any new seeds. They survived from the prior year, but they produced sparse flowers compared to the first year that I had planted them from seed. So now with this new round of seedlings, hopefully we'll have a big Snapdragon show this year. Astro Arugula. This is the first green veggie I planted for the year. The seeds germinated fast, and I put these seeds in a week ago. As you can see, the germination is pretty uniform here. Well, that's it. A roundup of my seedlings so far. I'll be planting more stuff this week, so stay tuned for a list of what I'm planting in future videos.